Did you ever get paid only for your money to disappear just days later? I used to be the same until I started working with millionaire clients and I saw what they did. It wasn't complicated and they weren't earning more money than you'd think. They just had a system that protected their money automatically. And this system took many of my clients from living paycheck to paycheck to having hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. Here are the 7 steps the wealthy follow every time they get paid. Step number 1, know exactly what's hitting your bank account. There's one number on your paycheck that matters more than all others, and it's not your salary. Getting this wrong is why your budget fails every single month. Know how much money is actually coming in. For example, if your salary is $60,000, that's $5,000 per month that you earn, and if you break it down weekly, that's $1,250. Here's the question. If you get $1,250 every week, does it feel like you actually get that much? Let's say of the $1,250 per week you get, $1,000 actually hits your bank account. For the sake of budgeting, I want to work with that $1,000 per week figure. Step number 2, isolate your necessary expenses. Big businesses create what's called a profit and loss statement. This lets them see exactly where their money is going, and it helps them identify what is essential. Personally, I would list them on Excel. I'd start with necessary expenses like your mortgage, transportation costs, insurances, phone bills, heat, electric, food, and anything else that you truly need. Now, if your necessary expenses are more than 80% of your net take-home pay, you might be in a situation where you find yourself in debt because most people tend to spend money on wants without really thinking through the costs. Write down this question for each expense. Is this a need or is it a want? There's an accountant I listen to who recommends that no more than 60% of your income should go toward necessary expenses. I agree with what she said, but I also know that this is not reality for everyone, depending on their circumstances. There was a point in my life where 100% of my income did not even cover my necessary expenses. So I had to fix this problem before doing anything else. Let's start with the gross pay. So we've got your salary at $60,000 per year. 60% of that goes toward your necessary expenses. So if we look at the necessities, let's just call it needs. There we go. If it's 60%, that's $600. Now we've got 40% to work with, which in this case would be $400 per week. Step number 3, pay off your debt, starting with the most expensive debt first. Before I use that $400 per week that I have left over to start investing or building wealth, the first thing I would do is attack that debt, specifically debt with an interest rate higher than 8%. If you were to rank the different types of debt, I might do it like this. First, we've got credit cards. It's got a high balance, high interest rate, and it often requires extreme treatment. The second type could be a personal loan, which is not as high interest as credit cards, but it's still high. And then lastly, we've got things like car loans or maybe even student loans. Typically, the interest rate is a bit lower than the other two. I would start with the high interest debt. And then if you have a mortgage, I would save that for last. What I would do is start by putting $200 per week toward my debt. And if I have credit cards, that's exactly what I would do. Now, $200 per week, that's $800 per month. So we should be able to knock down credit cards pretty quickly. If you're in a situation where you have a lot more than that, then you could look to up this to $300 or maybe $350. When it comes to your debt, if we're disciplined, eventually we're going to pay this off. And when it's gone, we're then going to have that cash flow that we can use to save. Let's progress on to step 4. Build a buffer to protect yourself from life. After we've killed the high interest debt, if you have a savings buffer, you're way less stressed when life happens. Life will hit you, whether it's new tires, emergency room visits, your dog or cat needs a surgery that costs $3,500. Without having money in savings, that's when people often panic And we say things like, it's not fair that I have to go through all of this. Everybody goes through things to a different degree. When we often get more stressed is when we don't have the means to pay for those problems. So what happens is if we worked so hard to get out of debt and then this emergency comes, well, now we're forced to go back into debt because we have to pay for those life events or emergencies with our credit cards, which kills all of the progress we made. Whereas if I've built a buffer, I'm equipped to handle that situation. Now, if I'm paying down my debt, but I don't have a buffer built, I'm going to try and build that buffer at the same time. You're going to have to use that money you're saving for life events as you're building it up. And eventually, you'll hit that $10,000 buffer if $10,000 is your specific goal. If you had 10 grand in the bank and you lose your job where you were making 60K per year, how do you feel? Probably a lot less stressed because you've literally bought the time to find another job. I would do this, specifically putting money in the bank until you have at least 3 to 4 months of expenses covered. Step number 5, start long-term investing. Now that your debt is paid and your buffer is built, here is where your money actually starts working for you instead of against you. Start by learning the basics about different places you can put your money. Let's go through a few. 401ks. Everyone has heard of those. Here's a couple points. With a 401k, money that you contribute is tax deductible. The money grows, tax deferred. And in many cases, you get a match. So you get a match dollar for dollar, that's a 100% return. On the flip side, it's hard to access money in a 401k before the age of 59 and a half. And when I eventually take money from that 401k, I have to pay income tax on everything. So when I look at 401ks, I'm probably not putting more than 1/3 of my money into long-term savings. The stock market. When I look at the history of the stock market, almost during any period, from a long-term growth standpoint, it works. You can't argue against it. So I like the fact that I could just put money in the market and not even think about it. And over a 20, 30, or 40-year period, there's a very, very strong likelihood that money is going to have grown to a very, very large balance. I also like that just putting money directly in the market is not in a qualified retirement plan. However, if the money has grown, I am going to have a capital gains tax that I am going to have to pay. And another area could be Roth accounts. I'm a fan of these because I like delaying gratification. How I delay gratification with a Roth or any type of tax-free asset is that I do not get a tax break when I put money here. But when I eventually pull the money out, it's tax-free. And with Roth accounts, if you have owned a Roth for at least 5 years, you can usually access the cost basis, that's the money you paid in, after you've had it for that 5-year period. Step number 6, use a whole life insurance policy as an advanced wealth building tool. There's a client I've been working with for about 8 years now. He's built up his whole life insurance policies where he's got a lot of money in cash value. And he recently reached out to see how he could use his policies to pay off his mortgage. And in doing that, he is going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. So with a whole life insurance policy, how it works is that the cash value, once you get past the initial years and the startup costs, might grow around 5% per year. And once a dollar passes through the cash value of a life insurance policy, it's compounding forever. So say he's got 100 grand in cash value, earning 5%, and he borrows $50,000 against that policy, he's going to have to pay interest on the 50K, but he still gets 5% on the full $100,000. So in his particular case, he had a mortgage of about $515,000 and he was 4 years into it. He's got 26 years left. And what we did is looked at his payments over the next 20 years and see exactly how much he'll pay to the bank, and the total interest he's going to pay comes out to $545,000. So what that means is over the next 26 years, as he's paying this down, he'll pay the $515 back and then another $545,000 in interest. So what we're doing is using his life insurance policy to pay this thing off. So he's going to take a loan of, call it, almost 500 grand, pay the mortgage he's going to save about $280,000 in total interest. And the big win for him is 20 years from now, when that policy loan is paid off and he is in his mid-60s, call it right around, a little older than 65, his cash value has been compounding the whole time. So what that means is it's going to be worth about $800,000. So he saved interest while his money continued to compound all the way through. A question I am asked all the time, is whole life insurance just for rich people? The answer is no, but it does work best for them for a couple of reasons. First, we've got the cash value and the safe growth. That works well for everyone. Everyone loves it. But typically, I'll see individuals take large loans against the cash value to buy real estate or invest in their business. And in order to have large amounts of cash value to borrow from, we have to put a lot of money in. So we have to capitalize the policy. The last step that makes all the difference: have fun with your money, guilt-free. Once you've built your buffer, your debt is paid, you've got some free cash flow, it's okay to spend some of it. Go out, have fun. That's what money's for to a degree. So for example, after we've built our buffer and our debt is paid, we have what? $400 per week. If you save that over the next 30 years at 5%, so 30 years at 5%, that will come out to $1,325,000. It's a lot of compounding. Sweet, right? Now, if you said, well, I want to have fun now, I don't want to just build money up to have fun later. Instead of saving $400 per week, what if I take $100 per week to have fun with and only save $300 per week? So you can do that, but we want to see the impact. So if you save $300 a week, that'll come out to $15,000 per year that you're now saving and investing. So if we look at $15K over the next 30 years, at the same 5%, just using that because it's a simple number, that will come out to just about $1 million that your money has grown to. So, is spending $100 per week for fun the next 30 years worth $325,000? Might be. It really depends on you. What I would do is look to get my finances healthy before having too much fun. Because when I spend, that's where debt comes into play, and that is where people often fall behind. Now you know these 7 steps to follow every single time you get paid. But knowing what to do with your paycheck is just one piece. If you really want to build wealth, you need to understand the assets that are quietly draining your money.